Okay, I'm going to review the test that we just took, the properties, functions, variation test, and then you can correct whichever ones you missed and get half credit back. Okay, so number 1, the answer is B. So a skydiver falls at a rate of blah, blah, blah. How long does it take in seconds if the skydiver falls 1,200? So I'm just going to replace X with 1,200 feet. I'm going to put that in my calculator. I get about 25.98. And now I'm going to take the answer choice and do the same thing. And when I plug it in, I get about 25.98. So those are the same. So B is the answer. Okay, number 2. We're talking about D is distance and H is the height above sea level. The height is 9. So I'm going to replace H with 9. Oh, sorry. There we go. And I'm going to put that in my calculator, and I get 3.67, which would be between 3 and 4, which is why it's B. All right, so the number of possible string sections S cut from a 4-inch piece, that's your K value, varies inversely, meaning K would be divided by the next one, L. So B is the correct answer. Alright, this one all you have to do is graph. If you missed this one, you may have forgotten to put parentheses around X plus 2. So if you chose a different answer, try it with those parentheses and you'll get the right answer this time. Alright, number 5, let's see. You're just trying to find the solution to the equation. So you're using X by itself. So 2 is being multiplied by the square root. Get rid of multiplication, you divide. So square root of X equals 5. And the only way to get rid of a square root is to square both sides. So X equals 25. C is the answer. Alright, for this one, I'm going to pick a point. Okay, so number of people would be P, and then hours would be H. So I'm saying 2, 6 is that point. So that is P and H. And if I plug this in, 2 times 6 equals 12. So that's the correct answer. If you plug in those numbers to the other ones, they don't work. So C is the only one that works when you plug in a point. Alright, this one, so we're talking about domain, that's your X values. What you need to do is graph this and look at where it hits the X-axis. Okay, so that's really hard to see, but if you'll notice, it hits the X-axis right here at 3.5, which is the same thing as 7/2, and then anything to the right. So notice that you're using the inequality that's to the right of 7/2, and that's why the answer choice is B. Okay, this one's talking about the y-intercept. So it's the place that it hits the y-axis. Alright, and this one actually hits at 3, which means I have a typo, and you all will get some points added back. My bad, sorry about that. So the answer should be 3. Okay, I don't know what I did, but we'll figure it out. Alright, this one's talking about range, that's your y values. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this in Desmos. Okay, so when you graph this one, the highest point it ever gets to, my little pen's not working all of a sudden. The highest point it gets to is 8, and then anything below 8. So that's why you're using the less than sign, because it hits at 8, and anything below 8. So the answer is C. Okay, so this one you're just looking at these two different statements. You can graph this first one. Okay, so the first one I asked, they have the same maximum value. They definitely don't. This have the same domain. They definitely don't. This other function is over here somewhere. It's definitely higher than the other one. They're not the same X values. C says they have the same y-intercept, and they both hit the y-axis at 2. So C is the only correct answer. Alright, so for this one, you can do it 2 different ways. You could plug in the answer choices, or you could remember that x to the 1/2 power is the same thing as the square root of x. And then the way you get rid of a square root is to square both sides, so x equals 64. Okay, this one is kind of hard to see. A is the area of the square, L is the length, it tells us that the area is 484. That's to the 1/2 power. So I'm just going to put that in my calculator, and you get the answer is 22, so B. All right, this one, we are talking about rational exponents, but also rewriting them as a radical. The first thing I'm going to do is, this is a power to a power, which is when you multiply. And when you multiply that, you get negative 8/3. I'm going to do like the little house. So this becomes like this. Whoa. That's not supposed to be an 8, sorry, that's a 7. The 8 goes here. And then because it's a negative, it's going to be on the bottom of the fraction. So 1 over the cube root of 7 to the 8th power. And that was worked out in the study guide. So the answer is C. Okay, this one, we're talking about which expression is equivalent or the same as. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remember that anytime I have the square root, that's the same thing as to the 1/2 power. So I'm going to rewrite it for just a minute. Same thing as the 1/2 power. And now I'm going to distribute that power to everything in the parentheses. So 16 to the 1/2 power is 4. Then I have m squared to the 1/2 power, so when you multiply you get 4m. On the bottom, p, 4 times 1/2 is 2. 6 times 1/2 is 3. So the answer is A. Alright, pretty much the same thing with this one. I'm going to remember that the square root, is the same thing as the 1/2 power. And then I'm going to distribute that 1/2 to both things inside. So 64 to the 1/2 power is 8. X to the 16th times 1/2 is x to the 8th, so the answer is B. Okay, for this one, I was just plugging some random values. So it says J and L are non-zero rational numbers. So let me do J is 3 and L is 5. K and M are irrational. I'm going to do square root of 2 and the square root of 3. And then it says which statement is always true. The result of J plus L is a rational number. So 3 plus 5 gives you 8. Yeah, that one's the only one that works, so it's C. Alright. You can do some random numbers for this one too. Any irrational number multiplied by a non-zero rational is equal to an irrational. So if I did the square root of 2 times 3, I get 3 square roots of 2, which is also irrational, so D works. Okay, a rectangle, my goodness. A rectangle has sides 3 and square root of 5. Which statement must be true about the area? When I multiply that, I get 3 times the square root of 5, and it's an irrational number. That's why it's B. Alright, so this exponent is to the 2/3 power. I'm going to multiply everything, I'm going to distribute that power to everything in the parentheses. And because we have power to powers, that's why I'm going to multiply the powers. So I'm going to do this. Okay. So 8 to the 2/3 power is 1/4. And when I multiply this, I get negative 14 over 3. When I multiply the next one, I get 10/3. Multiply the next one, I get 2. Oh, I get negative 2, my bad. And then for the last one, I get z to the 6th power. And then anything that's negative, I'm going to move to the bottom of the fraction. So I have a 1 on top. I have an x to the 10/3, a z to the 6. On the bottom, I have a 4, x to the 10, not x to the 10/3. Sorry. I'm rushing through this, making mistakes. W to the 14/3 and y squared. So the answer is A. Okay, this one is like the one you did in the discussion board. It's been on the study guide. The answer is D. Alright, this one's pretty hard. So the time t, so t equals time. X is people. And N is going to be trees. The time varies directly, so I'm going to multiply with the number of trees, that would be n, and inversely divide with the number of people, that's x. So suppose 6 people can plant 12 trees in 3 hours. So I'm going to multiply by 6. I get 18 equals k times 12. I'm going to divide by 12. So k equals 1.5. Right? So I'm going to replace this with 1.5. So now, how many people are needed to plant 12 trees in 5 hours and 15 minutes, which is the same thing as 5.25? I know that k is 1.5. My n is the number of trees. I'm talking about 28 trees now. I'm trying to figure out what x equals. So I'm going to multiply x to the other side. I'm going to do 1.5 times 28. I'm going to get 42. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 5.25. So 42 divided by 5.25, I get 8. This one, you can graph it in Desmos if you want to. You're talking about the domain, which is your x values. Okay, so it looks like this. Because you're talking about something like that's in the real world, we don't want negative temperatures, negative balloon masses, because that's just crazy. So really, if you're just focusing on this one, it's anything that's bigger than 0. So that's going to be our answer. All right, and then here's the last one. The volume varies inversely, so k divided by varies inversely with p. All right. So if the volume is 175 when p is 3.2, I'm going to multiply by 3.2 on both sides. 3.2 times 175, I get the k is 560. So now I want to know, what is the amount of pressure placed on 400 volume? And I know that my k is now 560. So the only thing that I could do to move the p to the other side is multiply. And then the last thing I do is divide both sides by 400. So 560 divided by 400 is 1.4. So B is the answer. So correct the ones that you missed. Give me a little explanation about why you missed it. And then send them to me, and I'll give you half credit back.